Hollywood's toughest working-class heroes stepped to simulate the set of The View. Assured a simple interview, but it coiled into one of the best acute alive moments in television history. What he began cat and mouse for him was annihilation abbreviate of an ambush. If you anticipation, you'd apparent celebrity meltdowns before. Catch up. This affray, amid Mark and Joy Behar, wasn't aloof, fiery. It was an absolute action of pride, able mistakes, and the analog of decency, all beneath the bound boring of millions. Of viewers, the cameras formed and the appearance collapsed, admirers animated as Mark Wahlberg absolved on stage, his assured Boston bluster, Ariel aloof, hardly by the blubbery restriction in the air. He wore a fleet clothing and an accessible smile, afraid easily with the co-hosts, as the acclaim settled. He sat at the bedfellow chair, comatose acquiescently to Whoopi and Sonny, afore his boring assuredly fell on Joy Behar with a glint in her eye. We're abutting today by amateur and ambassador Mark Wahlberg, whose actuality to advance his latest film, the aside abeyance afterwards latest blur, didn't go unnoticed. Mark kept his smile polite. Thanks, Joy. Always a amusement to be here. Joy's arch-augie slightly, the corners of her aperture curling. Oh, I bet it is, she said, her articulation belted with sarcasm. You know, Mark, you've had absolutely a career. Would you alarm yourself an able actor? The admirers chuckled nervously. Mark blinked, bent hardly off guard, but abnegation to flinch. Well, I've been fortunate, he said evenly. I've formed hard, and I'm appreciative of the projects I've been. Allotment of Joy's laugh, loud and dismissive, cut through the room. Adamantine assignment, or aloof arena, the aforementioned boxy guy from Boston in every movie. Because honestly, if you've apparent one Mark Wahlberg performances, you've apparent them all. Mark's jaw anchored any time, so slightly, but he kept his composure, folding his easily on the table. Well, Joy, he said with quiet resolve, I'd altercate anniversary appearance has abyss if your advantageous attention. Oh, I pay attention. Joy attempt back. Whoopee, confused in her armchair, uncomfortably. If that's your opinion, your advantage to it. He said, but I anticipate the millions of Bodies who watch my films and acquisition article in them to chronicle to ability disagree. Ah, yes, the relatable everyman. Joy sneered air commendation with her fingers. Alone, this everyman additionally owns mansions in Beverly Hills and wears 1,000 suits. How's that for relatable? Mark assuredly accustomed himself a baby. Chuckle, acceptance his eyes, betrayed his growing irritation. I haven't abandoned area I came from, Joy. You can be acknowledged and still breach accurate to your roots. Joy's announcement hardened, her articulation sharpening. Oh, please, you're as Hollywood as they come. You accomplish millions, assuming to attempt while absolute bodies out there absolutely do. You don't allege for working-class people. You larboard that abaft years ago. Mark took a abysmal breath, his Boston emphasis bit by bit into his words. Now, that's a hell of an assumption. Joy, you don't apperceive me, and you abiding as hell don't apperceive area I came from. Joy leaned back, accoutrements bankrupt smugly. Maybe not, she said, but I apperceive what I see, and what I see is a man who cashed in his artery cred for a big paycheck and forgot what it agency to absolutely accept, to action for something. Mark's fists clenched beneath the table. Acceptance, his face remained impassive. You've got a lot to say about me, Joy, he said slowly. But it sounds added like you're talking about yourself. The admirers gasped softly, and Joy's cheeks ablaze red. She sat forward, her articulation growing sharper. But appropriate now, we're talking about you, and I'm not done yet. Mark leaned back heartily. In his chair, his eyes absorption aloof, abundant to acknowledge the storm brewing beneath the surface. Neither am I, he replied evenly. The date was set, the action curve drawn, and as the bartering breach loomed, every distinct actuality in the collapsed and every eyewitness at home knew they were about to attest an article unforgettable. The lights came back up and the camera started rolling again. Mark sat with his easily clasped, the faintest restriction in his jawline. Whoopi and the added host sat quietly, acutely uncomfortable, their eyes darting amid Joy and Mark, like they were watching to Pitbull's ambit anniversary other. Joy didn't decay a second, so Mark Shell began, her emphasis about sweet, but with poison? This new cine of yours, let me guess, addition affronted Boston guy with a dent on his shoulder. Or did you assuredly annex out in comedy an affronted Boston guy in a altered hat? The admirers snickered nervously. Mark smiled faintly, but it didn't absolutely ability his eyes. That's cute, Joy, he said, but if you'd absolutely watch, the blur, instead of a loof account, the columnist notes, you'd apperceive it's about redemption. About a man aggravating to accomplish things right. How fitting. Aback your absolute career has been about you aggravating to redeem yourself for what you did afore. Hollywood bailed you out. The words hit the air like a whip crack. Mark's back stiffened, but he did an acceleration to it. Not yet. He stared at her evenly, his articulation calm. You appetite to allocution about my past. Endemic. Them, or aloof, swept them beneath the rug, while aflame that absorbing smile for the cameras. Because to me, it looks like the aforementioned old Mark Wahlberg in a nicer suit. Mark's aperture anchored into a beeline line. You absolutely adore disturbing bodies down, don't you? You pretend to be this best for the little guy, but at the end of the day you're a Loof edition millionaire who fabricated his money, assuming to care. The admirers murmured uneasily. Mark's Duke bankrupt the arm of his armchair already afore. He bankrupted it in his lap again. His articulation remained quiet, measured. You don't apperceive me, Joy. You don't apperceive what I do aback the cameras. Aren't rolling and you abiding as hell. Don't apperceive what I affliction about. Oh, but I do, Joy countered. Her articulation assent now, her Brooklyn bend acid through. You affliction about box appointment numbers. You affliction about image. You affliction about befitting your name accordant by arena the aforementioned boxy guy over and over because you're too afraid to booty a absolute risk. Mark assuredly let out a humorless laugh, afraid his head. You apperceive what's funny. You sit actuality every day and deliver about affection and adequation and progress, but the minute edition disagrees with you or doesn't fit into your little narrative, you amusement them like garbage. That landed akin whoopee aloft her eyebrows. At that one, but Joy didn't flinch. Better debris than a fraud. She attempted back. Aptitude advanced beyond the table. Mark's eyes narrowed slightly, acceptance his articulation backward even. Is that what you anticipate? I am a fraud because I've formed my absolute activity to prove otherwise. Joy airtight her Duke on the table. Oh, please, you anticipate you formed your absolute activity arena, pretend for millions of dollars, while absolute people, the ones you affirmation to allege for, absolutely struggle. You're a Hollywood creation, Mark. Annihilation more. Mark's fists coiled on the table now. His Duke-white acceptance he kept his emphasis controlled. You can say what you appetite about me, but don't you cartel boldness the bodies who've accurate me, the aforementioned bodies you allocution. Bottom word to every day, Joy's beam was sharp, cruel. Oh, don't adulate yourself. Cipher supports you. They abutment the abstraction of you because it's easier than acceptance. You're a Loof, addition, advantaged man who got lucky. The restriction in the collapsed was so blubbery now, it was adamantine to breathe. Akin the camera seemed to flutter as they zoomed in on Mark's face, his jaw tight, his eyes dark. He leaned advanced slightly, his words deliberate. You've got a lot of opinions about me, Joy, but here's the thing. You don't absolutely appetite to apprehend annihilation, real. You aloof appetite to win. Joy leaned in, analogous him. Oh, Mark, you don't get it. I already have. That complacent smile was the final spark. Mark sat aback in his chair. Absolution, the blackout adhere amid them like a storm billow accessible to burst. His adenoids flared hardly as he exhaled, his eyes anchored on hers. Whoopee assuredly spoke, her articulation tentative. Maybe we should move on to the movie, but neither of them akin blinked. Joyce smiled sweetly, but her eyes were abounding afire. Oh no, we're aloof, accepting started. And Mark's aside smirk, according genitalia, apparatic and dangerous, said it all. You're right, he'd murmured. We are. The collapsed acquainted like it was captivation its breath. Akin the audience, arranged shoulder to shoulder, was asleep, bashful now, their eyes darting aback and alternating amid Mark and Joy, like assemblage at a award-winning fight. Mark adapted his cufflinks slowly, about ceremoniously, afore comatose, his Italy aback on the table. His jaw was tight, but his articulation backward steady. "You absolutely adore this, don't you?" he said at last, his emphasis sharp but controlled. Joy aloft an eyebrow, her beam deepening. "Enjoy? What?" Mark allurement, the question's cipher abroad, is adventurous, abundant to ask. No, Mark attempt back, aptitude advanced slightly. "Enjoy bass people. You don't affliction about the truth. You affliction about accepting your little acclaim lines. You affliction about authoritative yourself, attending able at addition else's expense." The admirers murmured in agreement. In dissent, the astriction bubbles over now. Joy scoffed and coiled her duke dismissively. "Amuse additional me, the blood-soaked boxy guy act. You're an actor, Mark. You're acceptable at pretending, but you don't alarm me." "Good," Mark said, aptitude back, his articulation low. "Because you don't affect me?" The jab landed. Joy's adenoids flared as she straightened in her chair. "You apperceive what your botheration is. You've spent so abundant time, actuality, told how abundant you are. You absolutely accept it." Mark G, his head, his aperture crimper, into the faintest of smiles. "You apperceive what your botheration is. You've spent so abundant time disturbing added bodies bottomward that you've abandoned how to angle for article yourself." That one acutely cut deep. Joy sat aback for bisected a second, her eyes absorption afore she leaned aback in. "Cute line," she sneered, "but let's allocution about what you absolutely angle for. Mediocre movies, forgettable performances, in a career propped up by your abs and your accent." The army gasped. Akin whoopee winced. Mark's jaw anchored further, but he backward seated, his articulation calm. That's affluent advancing from addition, whose absolute career has been sitting actuality, throwing stones at bodies who are absolutely out there accomplishing something. Joy barked a acrid laugh. "Accomplishing what? Arena make-believe, assuming to be a hero while absolute people, bodies like me, absolutely action for something." Mark befuddled his arch slowly. "You're ambiguous, angry, for article with angry everyone." The admirers erupted into acclaim at that. A few akin stood up clapping, but Joy didn't flinch. She leaned closer, her articulation bottomward into a antagonistic hiss. "You anticipate that little accent earns you points. Please, your accomplished career has been one connected Boston artery hustle, aloof able up for Hollywood." Mark's eyes flickered alarmingly now, the alone arresting able in his accord so far. He set his award collapsed on the table and leaned in so abutting she could see the animate in his gaze. "Say what you appetite about me," he said quietly, "but don't you cartel insult the bodies I grew up with? You wouldn't aftermost a day area." "I'm from—" Joyce smirked. Acutely cerebration, she had the high hand. "Oh, what are you activity to do, Mark? Booting me outside? Show me how boxy you absolutely are. Maybe bandy a bite like the acceptable old days." Mark exhaled acutely through his nose, afraid his head. "That's the aberration amid you and me. Joy, you anticipate backbone is about shouting the loudest or throwing the aboriginal punch. But absolute backbone is befitting your address. A back addition like you is aggravating to booty it away." The words landed so heavily akin the camera seemed to pause, cat and mouse for her response. Joy's aperture coiled into an atrocious smile. "Oh, Mark, you've already absent your dignity. You're aloof to notice." The blackout that followed was deafening. Akin the collapsed lights seemed hotter now, the astriction so blubbery it acquainted like a concrete weight, acute on everyone. Mark straightened his tie slowly, his face a affectation of calm, acceptance his eyes austere with quiet fury. Again he spoke, his articulation low but clear. "You apperceive what? You're not accounted." Joy's smile faltered aloof, for a additional afore she snapped. "Oh, active abroad now, typical." But Mark aloof befuddled his arch and stood slowly, the complete of his armchair abrading the attic alveolette through the bashful room. "Not running," he said flatly, "walking abroad, aback at Aurora, while I still accept my self-respect, The admirers gasped. Again, bankrupt into asperous applause. Some for him, some against, but all riveted. Joy leaned back, bridged her accoutrements, triumphantly. But there was a beam of article afraid in her eyes now, as acceptance she accomplished she ability except gone too far. Mark stood still for a beat, attractive about the studio, again bottomward at her. "You've apparent anybody. Who you absolutely are," he said. Simply, "and so except I." And with that, he angry against the wings and began to airing off the cameras afterward him every footfall of the way. Mark's footsteps echoed through the collapsed as he confused against the bend of the set. He didn't rush, he didn't attending back. Every stride was deliberate, measured, as if anniversary footfall was allotment of account all on its own. Abaft him, the collapsed was a storm of murmurs and afraid laughter. The admirers, aggravating to accomplish faculty of what they aloof, witnessed. Joy sat durably in her chair, accoutrements crossed her aperture apprenticed into a tenuate line. Her beam was gone now, replaced with a aberrant announcement that betrayed article amid acrimony and regret. Mark paused aloof, a for extensive the curtain. Slowly, he angry aback to face the admirers one aftermost time. The camera zoomed in on his face calm, yet his eyes still afire, with a quiet fire. "I came actuality today," he began, his articulation accustomed acutely over the calm crowd. "To allocution about my work, to allotment article I accept in I was accessible for boxy questions. I was accessible for disagreement. But what I wasn't accessible for was animality bearded as journalism." Joy flinched at the chat cruelty. Acceptance she approved to affectation, it with the dismissive cycle of her eyes. Mark continued, demography edition footfall, against the sense of the date so his words could ability anybody watching at home. Bodie's tune in actuality assured honesty, a absolute conversation. Instead, what they get is addition application, their belvedere to breach bodies down, to abash them, to account bargain credibility at addition else's expense. The admirers erupted, some acclamation audibly in support, others too abashed to react. A few akin rose to their feet. Mark let the acknowledgement achieve, afore carrying his final words. "You don't accept to like me, you don't akin accept to account me. But don't any time anticipate that your job gives you the appropriate amusement bodies like they're beneath you. That's not journalism. That's aloof, blowing with bigger lighting." Joy's aperture opened as if to respond, but no complete came out. Mark nodded once, about as if to himself, again angry, and absolved the final few accomplished to the curtain. As he abolished into the wings, the army bankrupt into abounding applause, some standing, some shouting his name. Backstage, Mark's arranger and a brace of abashed producers stood frozen. He brushed able them with annihilation added then, a affable acknowledge you, his face calm already more. On stage, Joyce sat silently, staring at her hands. The added co-hosts, Whoopi, Sarah, Sunny, exchanged afraid glances, acutely shaken. Whoopi assuredly bankrupt the blackout with an aberrant smile. "Well, we'll be appropriate aback. Afterwards this break." But anybody in the allowance, and anybody watching at home, knew there was no advancing aback from what had aloof happened. Minutes afterwards, the cameras stopped rolling, amusing media exploded. Clips of the battle abounding Twitter, Instagram, and TikTok hashtags like #MarkV'sJoy, #Wahlberg exhibit, and had the appearance, complete bottomward, began trending oral hours. Fans and critics akin dissected every line, every gesture. Bodie's best sides, some praising Joy for actuality, fearless, others acclamation Mark as the apotheosis of adroitness beneath fire. But one affair was clear. The course of accessible assessment was accepted adamantine in Mark's favor. Headlines blared. Mark Wahlberg walks out on the appearance and wins the room. Joy Behar faces backfire afterwards, barbarous interview. Wahlberg.com/collected and done with the circus, akin above guests. And celebrities chimed in online, abounding arresting Mark's accord and criticizing Joy's advancing tactics. Later that evening, Mark acquaint a abrupt account on his amusing media. It's accept to disagree, it's accept to claiming someone, but it's never accept to abase them. Anybody deserves respect, akin aback, you don't see eye to eye, Acknowledge you to anybody who accomplished out. I'm appreciative to angle for what I accept in, and to airing abroad a back necessary. It racked up millions of brand oral hours. We for her allotment abide silent. The blackout louder than any aegis she could accept offered, and so the blind fell not aloof on an interview, but on one of the best dramatic acclaimed moments in daytime television history. The day Mark Wahlberg, absolved assimilate the view, kept his air-conditioned as connected as he could, and again absolved out, not defeated, but victorious. What do you think? Did Mark handle it the appropriate way? Did joy go too far? Drop your thoughts in the comments below, and if you enjoyed this story, don't balloon to hit that like button and subscribe for added absurd behind-the-scenes showdowns and untold celebrity moments. Reach acquainted because the abutting adventure is aloof about the corner.